Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Redesign Your Life Today. As you know, this podcast, it's about transformation. It's about sharing with everyone really transformational stories in people's life and to see how change is possible at every time in your life, at every age. So I'm Daniel Kobryner. I'm your host. I'm a mental fitness coach. And today we've got the immense privilege to receive my Michael Fraser on this podcast. And Michael has a very interesting story. He had two lives, so perhaps more. He will tell us more about that. But at the age of 24, things changed in his life and he discovered or rediscovered God. He will tell us about this. And it's really fascinating story. So without further ado, Michael, really very warm welcome on this podcast. And I said this was a very short introduction, but I would like you to run through your transformation and your life before and your life after. And so very welcome to you, Michael.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much for the conversation we've had to unwrap this time. I guess I have to start when after I got out of high school is where the problem started in my life that needed some transformation to take place. And I guess growing up, I grew up in a household with my mom and dad and two sisters, and life was good. And you get into the workforce after you're out of school and you're trying to find your place. So I started working at this place where I met a friend, and he was definitely into the party life. And I'm just using that as a general sense because there's all kinds of ways to have a party life. And my party life became unproductive. And so I realized I had a real problem. And I feel that I was calling out to God because of the relationship I feel I have with God. And so I was calling out to God, God, how long is it going to be till I can get past this party life? Because I realized it was like a trap I was in. And why do you party? Well, because you like it. And you're doing things with your body and putting things in your body that makes your body feel good. You know, if you're in the party life and the atmosphere you're around. And so I was crying out to God. And one of the things that really I reflected back on as I was in high school is that I was in good shape because I was a wrestler. And having realized the value of being in shape um, really was inspiring to me. And so after I moved out of the house, and got into the party life, I was trying to figure out, what I was going to do to get on with living and where I was going to go. And as I got my first house by myself, I wasn't married. I got my first house, and I always had a set of weights for lifting weights. And so I started lifting weights and following a program that was really unique for getting in shape. So I realized my physique was transforming. My body was transforming.
Mhm.
And so I started, and if you're in bodybuilding, which is what I really got into for a while, you're posing and looking at your physique and you're working on uh, different parts of your body at individual times, but it's most important to work on your whole body. And so I got into the bodybuilding routine, and I met somebody who else was a bodybuilder, and he had some success with posing routines and stuff, and so he had his own gym in his house. So I started working out with him. And then he said, "Hey, Mike, I think you ought to get in a local bodybuilding competition."
Mhm.
I said, "All right." So, but that time I was still partying full time. And I realized if I'm going to be serious about this bodybuilding routine, I've got to put the party life aside and dedicate at least 3 months to this time. And all the while, I was still calling out to God, I don't know how to do it. And you know what I was expecting him to do? I was expecting God to just move his magic wand and party life would be gone. But it just didn't happen that way. So I was preparing for this bodybuilding competition, and I took 3 months off of partying and was just dedicated to strict diet because you want to be as lean as you can because you're showing your muscles and how well they're developed. And so I had quit partying for 3 months, and I was looking at the date come along, and I wasn't big time in bodybuilding by any stretch of the imagination. This was just a very small competition, and there's only 5 people in the competition. But that was enough for me to decide I'm going to compete. And the bodybuilding competition came along, and I took third out of 5. So I'm just right in the middle. And I had therefore quit partying for 3 months. And I had every intention of going back to the party life because I liked it. And I didn't really, yeah, I guess I say I had every intention of going back to the party life. But in this time frame of 3 months, I was introduced to a girl, my age, a little younger than me, and we started dating, and she came to to my bodybuilding competition, and uh, the only problem with her, she didn't want to party. She wasn't a partier, and so I thought, well, man, if I'm going to have this relationship and she doesn't like to party, and I've already quit partying for 3 months, maybe I should just stop.
Mhm.
That is how God showed me that I could stop. I had to have a reason. And I had a reason. First of all, the reason was for the bodybuilding competition. So I took 3 months off. And then after that, I didn't have a reason not to party anymore. And so I was going to go back to the party life because God hadn't moved his magic wand yet. And obviously, this magic wand that he waved was this girl. Her name was Janice. She became my wife, and not too long after that. And
Mhm.
so I quit partying. My party life was done. And so he didn't have to move a magic wand, but he incorporated me with my decisions and my ability to make decisions in my life that helped me, I guess, come alongside God's plan for my life. So that was really the first big transformation in my life. And then, of course, getting married, huge transformation, an understanding of living with your soulmate, and that's what she became. And so that's the first transformation in my life that I really makes sense. So from there, that was when I was 24 years old. That was a long time ago. And so another transformation, and that came along is I grew up in Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
My wife and I, uh, we had spent 70 years in Pennsylvania, and the way that I now have, I unfortunately divorce was part of the upside down part of life, and the woman I fell in love with at 24. If some things happen and you're calling out to God again and you don't find the answer. And that's what happened there. And we end up getting divorced after 26 years. And so you're just thinking, you're just shaking your head, wow, God, what's going on here? So, anyways, the wife that I now have, I met at a Bible study, and uh, we got married 10 weeks later. It was like love at first sight. And she has 4 children, and I have 4 children to my first wife. So between us, we got a blended family, but we get along very well. And her youngest daughter lives in Tennessee,
Mhm.
which is 550 miles away from where we lived in Pennsylvania. And when we were 70 years old, My wife said, "Well, it's time to move to Tennessee so I can be near my daughter, and she's having children. I got grandchildren there." And so we packed up and left. And so that's a big transformation, moving across country, 550 miles, or doesn't matter how far you move. When you move, you move. But it's a little different. It's a different climate down here. It's a little warmer. There's different, a little bit different culture, but it's just another transformation that's taken place. So
Wow.
that's really, and so what I want to tell people about my transformation is that I share with people with my online course that how it happens, and I know there are, as I've listened to your other podcasts about things that people use, in their life, to transform their life. And my transformation wouldn't have any value to it if I didn't want to share it and let you make the decision. Do you want to see if this is a transformation life for you too? So basically, that's really why I'm here today. You're my first podcast that I've ever been on.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
well, you see,
you're
thank you for sharing that.
yeah, you are my first.
Oh, okay. And so thank you very much for sharing this. I mean, it's a beautiful story, Michael. And
Hmm.
you see, several things comes to mind. I mean, obviously, you see, when I when we do things like partying and but sometimes it could be even alcohol or
Yeah,
drugs or anything like that, sometimes, you know, it means that something's missing. That really,
yeah,
when we do that, we are like numbing ourselves. You know, it's just like, why? And we do it because perhaps we don't want to spend time with ourselves, see
hmm,
who we really are. And what the word which comes to mind is purpose there. Am I correct in thinking that when you started, this bodybuilding and this, your you had like a renewed purpose in your life, and then which actually led to you meeting your first wife.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you had a goal,
Hmm.
or purpose.
Yeah.
And so as you're analyzing your goal, then you got all these details that go into fulfilling this goal.
Hmm.
And so, of course, for a bodybuilder, he's concerned about his diet and about what he eats, and so therefore that's why I had to quit the party life, and not that I was a binge eater or anything, but I had to have my mind clear for this purpose. And so that's where it all began. And so therefore I was getting my mind clear. And so my body is what houses my soul and my spirit. And so they're all affected. You can't, separate them. They're one being. And of course, that's how I believe we're created in God's image. God in His Word says He created us in His image.
Hmm.
And I think that our images of God is that I believe that He's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Hmm.
And we are body, soul, and spirit. That's how we're created in His image. And I think it's a great value that we have that with this image, we can be creative, with the things, with the life we live and the things we accomplish, because we're not like an animal that is builds the same nest every day, every year, and we have a design that's incredible, one of creation. And you look at all the things that we've created in this world, and just the very fact of where us talking on the internet, you're over in London. I'm in the United States. We're talking like we're next door.
Hmm.
So this is the ability that I feel of us being created in God's image, that we are creative too, because I believe the God that I believe in is the God of creation. And He created all things. So, and I just share what I believe to be facts of life, and how the creation that He made, we can see Him in it. So that's that. These are all things that help transform my life and is my foundation, for maintaining where I'm at, and for moving on and for a hope that I have for the future, you know.
Absolutely. Mhm.
And and we have a hope. We hope for something because we don't see it yet. If we seen it, we wouldn't be hoping for it anymore, because the hope would be fulfilled. And so there's been things that I've hoped for, and sometimes they came and sometimes they didn't. But this foundation that I have of understanding the God of creation, it always gives me a hope, that uh, I'm going to understand his plan and his way, and I'm a part of it, and we are all a part of it. So
Yeah.
that's yeah,
And
yeah, the hope.
I have to say, this resonates with me,
Okay,
Michael, what you said. And just coming back 1 second to the bodybuilding.
yeah,
You see, obviously, in order to do what you've done, I mean, these 3 months where you stop partying, it needs a lot of discipline.
yeah,
And this is transformative because, see, sometimes people mistake uh, motivation and discipline. I'll give you an example. People take
okay,
New Year's resolutions. Oh, I'm going
yeah,
to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to lose so much weight. I'm going to do that. I'm very, very convinced. And by the 1st of February, 90% of these resolutions have already failed. Why? Because people say, oh, I'm not motivated anymore. Oh, yes, I went to the gym, but today it's cold. I'm not going. And people don't realize that motivation, it goes up and down and up and down, and it's fully normal. But this is where when discipline comes in, means
yes,
doing the things every day, whatever it takes, even when we don't feel like doing that. We
yeah,
listen to people like Michael Jordan. I mean, these people, they were remarkable with their mental. It's just like that.
yeah.
And so I guess, you really had this, really big shift there in having this discipline, in changing your life.
That's a good word, Daniel. Discipline. It says a lot when we analyze it and fulfill it. Because I learned discipline from my dad in a way because he's a very structured person, a very sequential thinking person.
Mhm.
Everything's done in this sequence, and this is the way he's wired. And so I learned discipline from that. But I guess I'm even going to go back further now to like I already said about being in wrestling in high school.
Mhm.
You had to discipline yourself there because they have weight classes in
Mhm.
in wrestling. So when I was in 11th grade, I wrestled 145. And so 145 pounds. So I did it. I wasn't a good wrestler, but I liked to wrestle. I liked the sport. I liked the exercise. Then my senior year, instead of going upper weight to wrestle, I went down a weight
Mhm.
to 138. And it took great discipline to get that weight off and wrestle in that weight class. So that's one of the first times I learned some real discipline and had to maintain it. And and it's amazing how when people go on diets and stuff, they're always looking for this release, when can I eat a piece of chocolate or something? And I think the main discipline we're looking for is to have control all the time, not just for a short period of time, but always to have, you know, uh, a handle on uh, life and change. And we're always going to run into changes, but
Mhm.
because of our discipline, we might get off track for a little bit. And the value we place in this discipline will bring us back and keep us in the hope of maintaining our lifestyle that we think is productive. And that's our purpose. And I have a saying, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. And that's what it takes. It takes discipline. And
See,
that's really where it started at. Um,
no,
my
exactly.
first discipline. So it go back to when I was 14 years old instead of 24 years old. Well, yeah, I was 14 years old when I was in 14 through 16, yeah, 17. Yeah,
You see, and thank you so much for sharing because sometimes you reflect back, we forget things, you see, and what you shared as well about your father is so
yeah,
important because what we learn is that, the first 7 years of our lives are crucial in our development.
Yeah,
Crucial
okay.
because what happens is this is when, from being a baby, from being born, we learn things and we learn them
Yeah,
first from our parents. You see,
yeah,
when we are a baby, we are defenseless. We just learn, we interact, etc. And then what happens is we take everything without filter. It's like we are being in a state of hypnosis until the age of 7, where we become more conscious of our actions. So what happens is this influences us a lot. So of course,
yes,
and it's not what people say. Actually, it's what people do. And we see this,
yeah.
and this is how we learn life. So you learn this from a very early age from your dad.
I am very blessed to have parents that had a good marital relationship and had a good home.
Hmm.
And of course, when I was growing up, I thought everybody had the type of home that I had, and I had neighbors and stuff, and their home. So, my best friend growing up, he had a very good family too, and there was 8 in that family.
Hmm.
And it was a great family because the mom and dad, they were providers of shelter and communication and discipline too. And yeah, yeah, children need discipline because foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. So sometimes he needs corrected. And so uh, he- I had parents that disciplined, and so did they. My friends, best friends growing up. And I thought that's the way life was. But since then, and I've learned that everybody's life isn't like that growing up. All my schoolmates in school did not have the same Christmas that I had and getting the presents and getting the things because their parents were partying. You
Hmm.
know, they hadn't they hadn't learned how to transform their life. And yeah, you're right, Daniel. We're looking for what it is. And my transformation is God. Jesus Christ, it has transformed me to help me understand that I'm part of this too. It's not, you know, God moving the magic wand like I thought he would. And sometimes, people were looking to be healed from diseases and stuff. And I've heard different podcasts about people that were transformed because of healing. And sometimes it's a healing that took a long time, and sometimes a miracle happened. But everybody's looking for, a change in their life if their life is challenged with things that they just are, that just drag us down.
Abs-
So
Absolutely. And it's very interesting because I shared with you just before that, I
yeah.
came from a non-religious background. I mean, I didn't practice religion, but you see, what I realized, it's only over the last few years, some kind of spirituality which grew on me,
Hmm.
where I understand that actually everything happens for a reason in life. There are no coincidences. And we learned, and what you said as well is that God or the universe or the creator, however we call it, brings us signs about what's going on there, and but very
Right.
often we are not open to seeing these signs. And when we become, things are really changing. I mean, and at my humble level, I would see that everything is within us. We are born as perhaps as God, or it's again my way of looking at things. But it's really we've got this inner power. It just how do we manage to get this out of ourselves? How can we express them? Because when we do that, this is really where we take our power back. We don't leave the power to others, but it's when we want change around ourselves, we need to become the change
Yeah.
ourselves.
Well, and here again, I guess we come back to what faith is.
Yeah.
And faith is what we believe in.
Yes.
And if this faith has a foundation that's that's a good foundation, and my foundation is in the God of creation,
Mhm.
and I believe that He created all things so that we can practically see that he's an infinite God.
Hmm.
And he uses all things all the time from the world he created, from the heavens he created to show us himself.
Hmm.
And so this is where I place my faith, and this is a foundation for my faith. And there's other faiths that they place their faith in the what you do, for transforming your life and stuff. And and some people's faith is totally wrong. And when your faith is to promote your faith by killing and murdering and raping women and stuff, there's something wrong with that faith.
Hmm.
But they have a faith too. And so it shows you there's evil in the world. And I think one of my purposes. I'm not going to tolerate evil if I don't have to. I want to share with people what the truth is about life and what has transformed my life, just like you're doing. You're sharing this podcast, because you've had a transformation in your life. And I watched the first podcast that you did when you were starting this podcast. And it was really enjoyable to watch that with that young lady that interviewed you. I could just see you were excited about what you had to tell because something happened in your life that transformed, and you had a neat experience. I call it a come to Jesus moment, but whatever you call it, is what your faith is.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for these words, Michael. You see, everything is around purpose, and sometimes we're looking for that. What's the purpose in our lives,
Hmm.
And for 35 years, I was in sales, I was in management of companies, which I really enjoyed. But
Yeah.
I realized, what did I enjoy? I really enjoyed building relationship, building trust, helping people. It was always with that from a place of love. It was not,
Yeah.
I'm not the the pushy salesperson, never was. It's really
No.
about how to understand people and how to really be of service. And I realized during the pandemics that listening to some coaches talking, life coaches, business coaches, that without knowing it, I had coached people all my life. I always people wanted to get the best out of themselves, but for them,
Yeah.
not for
Mm.
me. You see, so
Yeah.
so this grew on me. It's why I decided to do, and now I'm a mental fitness coach, and
Okay.
I had business people as well because obviously I've got all this experience in life, but what happened is that on alongside with this journey, I listened to some people who were quite spiritual, and some of them were talking about the power of the universe and the
Hmm.
laws of the universe. Some were talking about God, and again, this was kind of new to me. It's only because I was
Oh,
not brought up. I was brought up in a
yeah.
very nice environment, very friendly as well, but it was really there was no religion in this in this aspect. It was really more science based, if you okay.
Okay.
And
Well, science is good as long as you don't manipulate it with lies.
yeah, exactly. No, no. But you see, what happens is now what did I realize? Because I said I used to be very, and I'm still quite pragmatic and down to earth. But the idea was like, oh, this can only be true if it's been proven by science. This is perhaps now I realize that what science is. I mean, it's beautiful, Adam, but it's only minuscule in terms of the knowledge we have of this universe. And
Okay.
what about if somebody, proves something? All of a sudden, people will say, "Oh, yes, of course." So you
Yeah.
see, and I very much so now. I mean, obviously, when Einstein started, with talking about energy,
All right.
and it's fascinating because actually, we are all energy. We are all particles in movement. This is what we are. This universe, for me, is vibrations. It's just that. It's why there
Okay.
was this sentence from Nikola Tesla who said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, vibrations, and frequency. And I remember the first time I heard that, it kind of, it hit me because
Yeah.
I related to that. And it's interesting because when you listen to a lot of cultures, I mean, and traditions, I mentioned to you that I'm studying Kabbalah as well, which is very interesting as well.
Yeah.
And again,
Now,
it's about wisdom, huh? It's not about religion. But everything is about vibrations. It's there. And you see, even the way when we speak, every word we speak out, every thought, every
Right.
emotion carries a
Yeah.
vibration. And
Yeah.
actually, the way we interact with the world is that we interact with people, situations, thoughts matching our vibrations.
Well, you're really describing what it is to have a relationship with your fellow human beings
Mhm.
and how we are, yeah, being created in God's image. We have this ability uh, to have relationships that are far different than a human than animal relationships, and and the communication we have. And you look at all the languages we have and all the meanings of words and stuff. And uh, it's just amazing how we learn to communicate and the ability that our mind has to digest this. And, and yeah, that just when you learn to digest different things, it transforms you too. And of course, that's what has really transformed my life too, is I digest more of what God is saying to me based upon the word of God, which is to me the Bible. It's his written word. And here again, we use words to express ourselves, but then when you hear somebody speak, we have tonalities and expressions we put into it and pauses and stuff. And so that's one of the first things I was going to do. I was going to write a book about this life, this transformation, and how God has intervened in my life. And then I realized I had the opportunity. I instead of doing a book, I could do an online course that
Mhm.
was just. So I thought that's what I want to do. I want to use my voice, and it's a video too. And so if you see me, and then also I insert what I'm scripture that I'm referring to. So it all gave me the go-to, I guess, the purpose for what I was doing. It changed, from writing a book, but to doing video, which is something that's created by man again, this act of video and stuff. And I remember way back when videos first came out, they were on tapes and stuff, and now everything's digital, and the creation continues because we have this ability to create.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you see, and with this, I fully resonate. As you said, we are made in
Yeah,
the image of God,
yeah.
God, the creator. So actually, when we are born, Michael, we've got we've got all the light, everything is within us. What happens
Hmm.
is actually is being, imagine remember when you are a child, what do you say? People said, oh, what do you want to do later on? Oh, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a
Yeah,
doctor. I mean, everything is there and we believe it. There's no,
yeah,
oh, I want to
yeah.
be a dancer. What happens is afterwards, this is being dampened by our environment, starting with parents, family. No, be reasonable. You can't do this and that. But so you see, the way I'm looking at life is that the limiting beliefs we are not born with them. We
No, yeah,
acquire
okay,
them.
yeah, okay, yeah,
And
okay.
we acquire them, particularly I said in these first 7 years of our lives. You see, in mental fitness coaching, what I'm doing is really helping people understand the saboteurs which are holding them back from living the best life they can. What does it mean? Some of us are perfectionists. Some of them are controllers. Some of us are
Yeah.
people pleasers or hyperachievers. Or sometimes it's a combination of all of that. But this is not who we are. This is what we learned as a child. And
Hmm.
actually, very often it starts from a protection mechanism, just a
Yeah,
survival mode. And then we
yeah.
develop these patterns later on. So when we realize actually how we operate, how our brain is wired, how our subconscious mind is wired, then awareness is the first step. And then there's always a possibility to transform that, to become again who we truly are. Because life is about authenticity, it's about being who you are.
Well, I heard you mention that we're perfectionists, and that's what we used to say about my dad. He's a perfectionist. And so as I'm in my course of study and in my relationship with God,
Hmm.
I learned that God has this God who's your creator, and and another thing is every time a child is conceived in its mother's womb, a new soul has been created. God is procreation. So he hasn't stopped creating things. He's still creating things. Every time conception takes place anywhere, a new being comes into existence. And I think our beings live forever, we as human beings. But getting back to being the perfectionist, my dad was the perfectionist. And so I thought that's something I wanted to be. I wanted to be a perfectionist. But I can't be a perfectionist like him because that's not the way I'm wired. I'm not wired in always having to do things the exact same way, and there's got to be a right way to always do it. And so I learned that I'm more random. I can go with the flow, and I might not be the leader, but I'm good at following. And if changes come about, yep, let's go do it. Let's just keep going, And so I learned that my dad is I learned to term him as being sequential. There's a sequence of things, and uh and there's we're all wired different. And so that's when we're bringing out who we are to use how God has our brain wired, too, for our purpose in life. And I think that's what helps us determine what our purpose is with the aspirations we have and the things we find joy in doing. And I look at how bad it is, um, when somebody has an aspiration for maybe being in sports and when they're growing up, and they were good at it. They were good at coaching people. They were good at playing. They were good at, and then life comes along, and instead of going that way to make a living, they just decide to go work in a factory somewhere, and they're miserable all their life, you know. So they aren't fulfilling their purpose. And I've seen that and understood that. And therefore you get into this is why people party, because they're not happy with their life. So they put their something into their body to make them feel different.
Exactly,
What we're
exactly.
talking about, I believe, is making our being function better, by the decisions we make and the disciplines we have for our life. And so,
Absolutely. And you see, when you say that, I mean, obviously, said I'm mentioning about coaching, but as well, I found my purpose. I mean, my purpose as well is, I said, helping people really living the best life they can. And again,
yeah,
it's something which is above myself. Really, I'm kind of, you see, I realize that I've got perhaps some abilities and I put all egos on the side. And it's very important because it's not about me, but we are, each of us on this planet, we have unique abilities given by the Creator, God,
yeah, yeah,
superior power, however we call it,
yeah,
so, and my belief is that it's our duty to use these abilities we have the best possible, but to help others, to make this planet a better world. This is my purpose. And with this podcast, I was mentioning to you, again, it's about inspiring people. It's about motivating. It's about showing them that everything is possible in life. Every change at any stage. And see, you mentioned, and we discussed a little bit about this, Mike, uh, these people who feel miserable because they don't do the things we enjoy
yeah,
doing. And yes, in one of my podcasts, I talked about this ikigai, which is really important. And for anybody who doesn't know about that, it's a Japanese term which means the purpose of life.
yeah.
What
Okay.
is it? Is that imagine four quadrants where, first of all, you would ask yourself, what do I really enjoy doing? What do I love doing? What's my passion?
Mhm.
In which thing would I go up in the morning, anytime, and really be happy to do something? It's the first thing. Second thing is what are we good at? So again, what are
Yeah.
our
Okay.
unique abilities? And again, it's not about us praising ourselves, not at all. But imagine we asked our friends, our family, what do you think I'm really good at? Again,
Hmm.
without they would tell us, and we know. So the third thing is how can we help the world with a product, with a service, but how can we be of service? And the fourth, and this is really with purpose, and the fourth is how can we be paid for? And again, paid, it's not just, it can be money, but it can be as well about rewarded spiritually. Oh, I work for a charity, I'm helping people, I'm serving soup to poor people. Wow, this makes me feel good. So when we cross these four elements, it's our passions, our unique talents, what the world needs, how can I be paid for, fulfilled? And you cross this, and this is the ikigai. And the ikigai
Okay.
changes can change in your life. You don't
Hmm.
have because
Yeah.
and
Right.
when we realize that this is where all of a sudden life becomes much clearer because and I go back to what you said before as well, Mike. And I really, this term was not really familiar with me, but now I embrace it. It's about faith. It's about faith that we are on this path. Do we know how we are going to make it? No, sometimes we don't because we know things are not just in our heads. They are as well. Think about God, creator, higher power. But when we know that, this is where things happen. And what's always very important is to take action, to start, even if we don't have it all figured out like a perfectionist would do. I used to be a perfectionist myself. I thought
Hmm.
it was great, and it was not at all. I wasted a lot of time and energy in my life for nothing, Michael. So now, instead of just following my head, which I used to do, I follow my heart and my
Hmm.
instinct.
Well, I think as you talk about being a perfectionist, and that's probably because you're a sequential person, and that's the way you could always work things out because we're looking to solve a problem. And when we have this course we go on that solves a problem, that's our purpose. We want to be successful. We want to prosper in the things we do. And what you just described there with those four quadrants is the same thing I think about in my relationship with God. You know, you want to have a purpose for serving God and the God of creation, and
Mhm,
you want to care for your fellow man, and um, but I look at it in three aspects, because I believe we're created in the image of God, and the image of God I believe we're created in is that we have a body, soul, and spirit. We
mhm,
are we are a triune being. We're three identities, a body, soul, and spirit, but one person. And our God that I believe in, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, there are three identities in one God. He's one God, and they're always in unity. And our body, soul, and spirit are arguing against each other from time to time. And so when we learn to bring balance between them, and I've heard that mentioned in the four quadrants you're talking about, bringing a balance to your understanding of life. And so when we learn to balance our body, soul, and spirit, there's harmony. Harmony by divine design is what I call
mhm,
it.
mhm,
And therefore, that's why God used my body for me to stop partying. I was calling out to God, how God, how am I going to do this? Well, He used my body and the love that I had, I already been trained in for being in shape when I was in wrestling practice. And really, I think I liked practicing more than I liked wrestling because it was working out. I was good at it. I was intense. So He used my body to help align my soul and my spirit. I started, my soul was blessed with the girl I met, that rescued me from going back to the party lifestyle. And my spirit was transformed because I was not violating a lifestyle that was without faith in God. And I was learning to understand that God has a way for us, is best for us. He's not an ogre who doesn't want us to have fun. He wants us to prosper. He wants us to be enjoy life. But that's what these four quadrants say too. It's not about all happiness, but it's about serving and purpose. And I agree with that totally. And isn't it amazing that we've came at this with two different agendas, but I think this goes to show us the creativity we have being created in the image of God. The creativity that we have, to understand, this network of things in our environment and how we serve one another. And you come off with the agenda of having purpose to help people.
Absolutely. And you see, again, one of my beliefs is that I said, we are here on this life for a mission, right? And so there is a path which is again where we are being guided.
Yeah,
Now, something very interesting is that although there is a path, one very important aspect is we always have free will.
you're right.
So, and this is
Yes.
our
Boy,
choice.
what?
We
Yeah,
do or we don't. And then, but you see, what's very interesting is that even if we don't go on the path which really was designed to us, we are always being guided back
yeah.
by the
We see,
Creator.
well, when we're off the path, I think God calls it liberty. He
Mhm.
gives us the liberty to make decisions in our free will, and because of His sovereign way of identifying with us, if we're having a relationship with Him, He's always going to guide us back. And so we get to experience things, and I call it liberty. When we are big on liberty here in the United States of America.
Mhm.
And you see that people who have liberty and the wrong path they go down, and people who have liberty to go a life that is of great purpose for humanity in doing things. So um, that's that's my transformation that I've experienced all my life, and I'm growing in my faith. My faith is always growing and it's thriving and it's alive and active. And when God talks about His word, He says, "My word is living and active." And the transforming power that this dialogue has when we hear what it says does something to us. It brings life to us. It's living and active. So this is all part of the transformation that I've experienced. And of course I'm concerned about what's it like after this life is gone. That's where it almost kind of starts sometime. Where am I gonna what's death? You know? And I don't need to talk about death. I talk about life because while I'm here, um, I'm talking about life. And so this is what caused me uh, to develop this course. And I advertise the course on Facebook right now,
Mhm.
and that's the only place I've got to advertise. But if you just go to, and I'm not trying to, it's a decision that people make. It's not that I'm trying to. Um, you know, uh, down anybody, but I'm trying to show you what has transformed my life. And it's on Facebook on Discover Your First Love for God.
Mhm.
And if you go to Facebook, that's where it's at. It's this course that I have, and you can decide whether it's for you or not by the advertisement I have on Facebook. And just go to discover your first love for God, and it's there, and you can see me speak. I speak for five minutes and 32 seconds to introduce how God's transformed my life and different issues that people have in your life, because I think your agenda is to help people with what you've understood that transformed your life. And so that's what we're doing. And so we're letting people make the decision. And so, there's some people's faith that that they want to force their faith on you. And if you faith, and there's a certain faith that's very popular in cultures that if you don't want to believe in our faith, we're going to kill you. And that's the wrong kind of faith.
Well,
Something
exactly.
wrong with
And,
that
and
faith.
and actually, if you look in all religions, it was never, you wouldn't find it in the Bible, that actually people would say, no, you have to be good, you have to love others. But sometimes it's being distorted by some
Yeah,
religions, and some
yeah,
people.
yeah.
This is really, it was because they wanted to have control about on people. But it was not done from a place of love. It was really done
Right.
from a
Oh
place of
man.
fear.
Yep.
So,
Wow.
so
Wow.
no,
You mentioned the word love, Daniel. I can't. That is just an incredible thing, because there's faith and there's hope and there's love.
yeah,
And love is the greatest of them all, because when things get accomplished because of our faith and and the hope we had as we're going this path of transformation, it's the love we have for our love relationship with God, or our loving our neighbor as ourself. And that's the second greatest commandment. If you're aware of I know you're aware of that to some extent, and that's very common. The first commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your body, soul, and spirit, and the second is like it: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And that's just what we're doing.
exactly. And you see, when we are, you know, if you think, what would you like people to say, when we die, right?
Yeah,
What would they write on our
yeah,
grave? And if you think that, you know, again, it's not about ego, it's not a but. If we've
right,
been able to impact people positively,
yeah,
to bring some good in this world, to really
mm,
give love, to share, to care for people, this is, what can be more fulfilling
yeah,
than and really trying our best. And sometimes, it succeeds, it does, sometimes it doesn't. But when we really always strive to be the best version of ourselves,
yeah,
just to, well, what can go wrong there? Because, when
yeah,
this is it, and it's about as well being good to people. It's about being impeccable with our words.
yeah,
And it's not for others, it's as well for ourselves. It's about, you know, people talk about self-love. I didn't even know what it was a few years ago. I would have listened to that with a
okay,
little bit of, well, I was not sure. But now it's about understanding who we are, accepting ourselves the way
yeah,
we are, accepting that we are not perfect, but the more we know ourselves, the more we start loving ourselves. Again, it's not in a selfish way, but it means looking our physical needs, spiritual needs,
yeah,
emotional, mental. This is how we are going to shine to the world, because actually, the better we understand and we love ourselves, the more we'll be able to do with others, because our interaction with other people, it's only a mirror of who we are.
yeah, yeah,
So, well,
yes.
look,
Well,
really, I mean, this has been a wonderful interview, Michael, and for your
yes,
one.
thank you
And
very much.
well, thank you so much. And I've got this question which I ask my guests that, it's like just at the end of the interview, is like, if you were thinking about three tips you would like to leave our listeners with today, I mean, in terms, it
Okay,
could be, of course, what we discussed, like advice, and what would it be, Mike?
yeah. Well, you're asking a great question. Um, I think people need to know the God of creation. And I think the God of creation is found in the Bible.
Mhm.
And it's up for you, as a person, and to look at it and and read it and see what it says. And then I have a relationship that started before I was a teenager that I accepted Christ as my Savior. So that was just the starting point. But then growing, finding what it takes to grow and mature, So your starting point is with God, and the second is developing a personal relationship with God, and then serving. And God tells us in his word, he said, read my word, then you hear it, then you'll heed. Read, hear, and heed. That's what happens. The church I attend, there's a phrase we have, obedience will appear when the word of God we hear. And I already talked about how transforming the word of God is and the truths that are found in it. So that's my go-to. God, your personal relationship, and your service. That's the three tips I have for life. And really they're in line with what you did, but I don't you don't have the same spiritual aspect, with we've got a difference in spiritual aspects and in spirituality. But I'm not gonna, you know, you know, down anybody.
You
It's it's
see,
it's it's
exactly.
it's
Well,
we I tell people this so that they can make a conscious decision for what they do. I'm not forcing anybody to do anything.
no, thank you so much, Michael. And you see, actually, we're quite aligned, in many things.
Yeah,
We want this place to be a better place. We want to be of
yeah,
service. We want to, and
yeah,
you see, faith is very, very important. Again, faith can be in different, things, but it's about really believing, and it's about acting. It's about doing things which are really going to make a difference in this
yeah,
world. And
yeah.
and so no, it's been fascinating. So, Michael, when people want to contact you, what's the best? You mentioned your Facebook. Perhaps you want to mention it again?
Yeah, yeah. I'm on Facebook, and this is where I have my course outlined. But as you go to Facebook, go discover your first love for God, and
Hmm.
you'll see the intro to this course. And really, the course is entitled "God Wins Again: Your First Love." That's the title of the course. God wins again, your first love. And so they can go there and write something. But I also have an email if I want that. Do you want me to give that?
Sure,
All
of
right.
course.
And that is a very much in the same line. It's called and number one, your first love 25 at yahoo.com. Your first number with a number one, love 25, because this whole thing started with what I'm doing in year 25. So we're already into 26. But it's your first love 25 at yahoo.com. That's
Well,
how they can reach me by email for this for
excellent.
this.
And we'll put the details afterwards and
Yeah,
put
okay.
notes of the podcast. So, well, Michael, thank you very much. It was really a
Yeah,
beautiful
it was.
conversation.
I'm delighted. I felt really comfortable with you as a host. Yeah, I'm delighted to get to know you.
Well, the
So
pleasure was fully shared, Michael, and
yeah,
and I want to thank everybody from the audience who is watching now at the end of this interview, and I hope you got some interesting thoughts from that. And again, whatever resonates with you, just if you want to reach out to Michael, please do that. And I will see you all at the next episode. Thank you very much again. Bye bye.